Good evening and welcome to the Minions of the Zoo. I am your Keeper the Hairy channel, and with me tonight are Minions SkepTok.
Hi, everybody.
Geodes.
Hello.
Dr.Functional. Serenity Star 13.
Hello.
And Sora Luna.
Hi.
Hey, how is everybody
That
today?
was very high pitched. Sorry.
Hello.
I'm good.
You're good?
Yep.
Anybody need to unburden themselves before we dive into the giant pile of news that was this week?
Bill Maher is a bloody turd.
Oh, we've known that for a while, honey.
Did he do something more turd-like than usual, more recent?
Not anything more or less than usual. Just I watch his show still every week because I don't know. I like car wrecks.
Mm-hmm.
He's just being a turd as usual.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that Bush 2 was in, and you could make all kinds of jokes about Cheney and Halliburton, and there was just a lot to make fun of. And he was sort of in his element at that point because that was the kind of thing that worked for him. And then Obama came in and he didn't know what to do with himself. He didn't know what to do with himself, and he can't cope with he couldn't cope with Trump. And now he's sort of trying to figure out what does he want to be when he grows up under, a Biden presidency.
Obama
He was
3.0.
like a JFK impersonator in December of 1963.
And he's at the ripe age of like 76 now, so
Too
Is he
soon.
76? Yeah.
something like that.
Well, you know, how old was Grandma Moses when she decided to start painting?
Bill Maher is 65.
65.
65. Yeah.
Thought he was mid-70s.
So, is he going to start painting? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just wondering, you remember Grandma Moses, don't you?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, she was a kid when I was already a young adult. She was much younger than I was.
Well, the point was she did, like, one of the later in life career changes that anybody knows about. I think she was like above 70 when she suddenly started becoming a professional painter. And people say, it's too late for me to change. It's like, Grandma Moses, there's your example. Obviously, it can be done. Unless you're saying you're weaker than a frail old grandmother who can paint. Anyway. Let's see. Oh, look, I already have the news up. I totally forgot what I was doing. This is our first story, which is about everybody's
By the way,
favorite
she started painting at 78, Harry.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome.
I just think
it is.
Amazing.
The capacity for change and growth never really stops. So when you hear somebody who's like in their 40s going, it's too late for me, it's like, Grandma Moses.
Yeah. Hell, I can put it off 9 years and I'll just be tied with her.
You've got 9 years to go before you have to change
I've got
careers.
plenty of slack time before I have to get off my ass.
When you're not out watering the tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff.
God, no kidding.
Okay, so St. Louis gun-waving couple plead guilty to misdemeanor charges. I know this has probably been covered by a bunch of other people, but I got the sense we would want to take a little bit of time to give our individual takes on this.
I've got a little bit of an unusual take on this.
Okay, let me just read a little bit from the article just to frame it,
sure.
and then you got to go. No, you're fine. Mark McCloskey, 64, will pay a $750 fine for pleading guilty to fourth-degree assault, a Class C misdemeanor. Patricia McCloskey, 62, must pay a $2,000 fine after pleading guilty to second-degree harassment, a Class A misdemeanor. Mark McCloskey could have faced up to 15 days in jail. Patricia McCloskey could have spent up to a year behind bars. Neither will face jail time. This particular resolution of these two cases represents my best judgment of an appropriate and fair disposition for the parties involved, as well as the public good, the special prosecutor in the case, former U.S. Attorney Richard G. Callahan, said in a statement.
All right, you Callahan.
All right. Now, my question to everyone listening is, what did these people do? A mob came onto the area where their personal estate, where their home is, and it's protected behind It's a gated community. These people broke into that community and threatened these people. All these people did was stand out there holding their guns. They didn't point them at anybody. I mean, I know there's a lot of back and forth about this, but in point of fact, they didn't do anything that was even remotely threatening to anyone, but they were out there holding their guns. That's essentially what they are being convicted of, a crime. And we're supposed to celebrate because they weren't convicted of a major crime?
Right.
I'm not
We're not
celebrating
supposed to.
this at
We're
all.
not
This is
celebrating.
horrifying. This is
It
horrifying.
really is.
Well, I mean, this is to
And
please
they're
the
taking
mob.
their guns away. They're taking their guns away, which, to this guy, he's a rich guy. He doesn't care. They're taking one of his 30 guns away. Who cares? But for somebody who, they saved up their money and they bought a personal weapon, that they have one personal weapon, they get to protect themselves once. And then if they use it to protect themselves, the government takes the gun away from them. And this makes sense on whose planet?
None.
Yeah.
Well, he's running for office, as I recall, right?
Yeah, and this is mob appeasement. This is all this is.
May a thousand flowers bloom. But
Well, it's mob appeasement, but one more thing. Finish up, Skep, and then.
Well, that's all I had to say. Is that I think that this thing is terrible, and these people shouldn't be charged with anything. All they were doing was ensuring that their property was protected.
Nobody else was going to.
Right.
Nope.
Police
Right.
weren't going to come in, even if they say, "Oh, they're on their way." Well,
Yeah, the police are on their way.
They literally can't touch anybody whose skin's
Yeah.
darker than Americano. Because
The police are minutes away when seconds count.
yeah.
A person can do an amazing amount of damage with a gun, or setting your house on fire, or setting your property on fire, or killing your dog, or whatever,
Mhm.
in a moment, an instant. You have to be prepared.
Even though the result is very minor, these fines at the end of the day don't add up to much. It's a deep-seated miscarriage of justice. It's unconstitutional. I just shake my head. I don't get it.
Well, there was law that explicitly protected the behavior that they engaged in.
Yes.
I don't think they were being irresponsible with their guns at all.
Mhm.
What this is, at the end of the day, is the state did something they shouldn't do. And he's an attorney, so he's sort of used to this type of legal wrangling. They simply presented him with an offer that allowed them to not be subject to him suing them for wrongful prosecution.
Right.
And
They
I
get
think
to
that's
slink
all the
away.
state. Yeah, they wanted to essentially take that off the table, and by him pleading guilty to this minor charge, which in reality it doesn't do him any personal harm. In fact, if
No, but
anything,
it solves their
it-
civil case. That's all it does.
it does. It solves their civil case, and it prevents them from coming back and suing the state for the wrongful prosecution. And at the same time, he doesn't care about the money. He's running for office, and it'll be really interesting to see if he actually wins. I don't know what the demographics of his area look like. Does anybody know?
St. Louis?
How representative was the mob of the people who would be voting for him is the question.
Yeah, in the area in which he lives in, if he's running in that area, and it's pretty much characterized by that, the mob doesn't know anything about areas like that.
Yeah. And there's,
you know,
while Serenity's looking stuff up, there's
Yeah.
two things. They broke into a gated community. That was one break-in. So that
Yes.
the whole community that they were in was private property.
right.
And then they broke down an iron gate, which was closed and locked, so that
Exactly.
the crowd could enter the grounds of his house. So they
So-
broke in not once but twice. And some of the people in that crowd, I believe, were armed.
Yes, they were. Okay, real quick. Sorry.
that
real
doesn't
fast.
matter
I
either.
don't know.
Real fast.
No.
In the area of St. Louis Metro, by political party as of 2014, conservative is 13%, moderate is 46%, liberal is 35%, don't know is 6%. That's the breakdown.
Oh,
I
okay,
know sample size is bullshit, but
No, St. Louis, you have to understand, there are parts of St. Louis that are extremely conservative. They're very, and they tend to be wealthier. There are many parts of St. Louis that are in terrible shape. The entire east side of the city. There's actually a city called East St. Louis that's, I think it's in Illinois. And that is poor, rundown. It's basically Detroit in Illinois. It's the worst part of St. Louis. St. Louis has a large minority community, and they're pretty woke. They're pretty, mobilized and for the cause and all that stuff. So it's by and large a very liberal city generally but there are some extremely conservative pockets, particularly on the north and west side of town.
Well,
at least that's my memory.
I think if he conducts his campaign competently, he may very well win.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you want to go from the, sorry, Gio, it's real fast.
Yeah.
If you want to go from the political standpoint, he can use this second degree stuff, like what Skep was getting at. Like, I have more than one gun. Imagine what will happen when they come for you when you only have one gun. Vote for me and this won't happen. That if he plays his cards right, he could use this. It's not the best thing, but he could still use it to get him at least some votes from some people.
Yeah, well, this is going to be ongoing. Sorry, Geodes, go ahead.
I was going to say, Viva Fry and Nick Ricay have both done videos on this. Viva Fry's, most of his views are kind of actually what we expressed here, which is, more or less a kind of a brief summary. But Nick Ricay went into a bit more in terms of looking at the laws and that around that area, and basically they're it sounds like he thinks that at least it wasn't the worst play to agree to a misdemeanor charge, but it's one of those things where I would just recommend watching their videos because they have a bit more info from a legal perspective. So
right, we're not offering legal analysis at all. I will say this though, that their castle doctrine is so clearly worded that even a layperson can understand that technically they should not have been charged with anything.
No,
let alone have to plead this deal. But this is a gift, really, because it solves the problem. It gets everything out of the way. The prosecutor can just say, okay, we're signing off on this, done and done. And he can get on with his campaign. If anything, it's probably a net positive for his campaign. So, sorry if I'm being overly pragmatic. I mean, I totally get that it's wrong, but I think he's going to be all right. I think the charges against his wife are actually more ridiculous. I don't know why she would be Class A with her gun that was disabled that wasn't really a gun, but it was the threatening manner. Anyway, sorry, I'm derailing my own show.
Well, anyway, McCloskey is going for the Republican nomination against former Governor Eric Greitens and Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt. Those are the two people who are probably more likely. One of those two is more likely to get elected than McCloskey at this point.
He's they bought that property and it was actually run down, pretty much abandoned for a long time. And the beautiful house that he has now is the result of, over a decade of work.
Right.
Of taking this thing and taking it from nothing and turning it into something amazing.
He didn't build that. He didn't build that.
He didn't build that. It takes a village to build a house.
It takes a village to build. Yeah, exactly. That was built by all the gamers sitting around postulating that communism is a wonderful thing. Those were the people
everybody's
who
going
really
to get a
built
house
that.
like that. Yeah, everybody's going to get a house like that in communism.
That's right. That's right. Sooner or later.
Because it's not a just world if there are billionaires in it. Let's see.
You can't have any
Speaking of justice, look at that segue. So beautiful. Portland Police's rapid response team disbands after mass walkout. Okay, I know this has been covered too, but we need to take a few minutes just to talk about this.
Wasn't that over the policeman being
indicted,
pursued for assaulting someone he was trying to fight off, a guy who was attacking him?
It was excessive force, and I believe it was against somebody claiming to be a journalist.
Yeah, right.
And they were all like,
Let's see.
"Fuck you."
According to the
Journalists holding
Portland Police
Molotov.
Association, the August riot began outside of the Multnomah Building, a local governmental site in southeastern Portland, marking the 75th consecutive night of mostly peaceful violence. There were reportedly posts online calling for those attending to bring firearms along with other weapons. I learned all of this from Skep, by the way. So the crowd
enjoying it.
outside the Multnomah Building numbered around 200, many of whom were well equipped with helmets, face coverings, and weapons. They began setting fire to dumpsters, damaging buildings, and breaking windows. One of the rioters threw a Molotov cocktail into the building, which set it ablaze. I'm sorry, mostly peaceful ablaze. A number of riot police dispersed the crowd away from the Multnomah Building so that the Fire Bureau could extinguish the growing fire. However, the crowd returned to the building once more. In the resulting chaos, Officer Budsworth was pushed to the ground, promoting the other officers to use pepper spray, among other tactics, to dispel the crowd. One of the other officers sought to take one of the rioters into custody, but when other rioters interfered with the arrest, officers, including Budworth, began using their batons to clear the crowd from disrupting the arrest. As per his training, Budworth used a baton push to move a rioter, later known to be Terry Jacobs, out of the area. As Budworth cleared her out of the area, she fell over. Budworth, believing she was going to get up and resume interfering in the arrest, sought to provide one last baton push to ensure she remained on the ground.
Yeah, I would have baton pushed her too. She would have waked up in the emergency room.
I believe that she got that's referred to as a bonus stick time or stick
Right.
overtime.
Yes.
Under the circumstances, I think it seems entirely justified. However,
Justified,
he accidentally struck Jacobs in the head. He was actually aiming for one of the squishier parts that didn't cause the the head trauma symptoms. I'm sure he didn't hit her in the
Heading
head on
for the
purpose.
throat.
Did he kill her?
No,
Does it have a happy
But
ending?
she
Budworth
No.
baton.
Damn it.
See, Budworth baton pushed. This is terrible. Budworth baton push was described by the Portland Police Association as the lowest level of baton force used by officers, as opposed to a strike or a jab. The association maintains that Officer Budworth did exactly as he was trained. And 50 of his compatriots agreed with that assessment. He was indicted on charges that he used
indicted.
excessive force. He was indicted.
Yep, he was indicted. And then they walked.
Well, they walked off that task force.
I think they walked
didn't
completely off the.
They didn't leave their jobs on the police force, but they
I
did
thought
resign.
they did.
They resigned.
Resigning
did-
from this particular unit does not mean that you cease to be a
Okay,
officer.
it was
just
just one of
means
the
that when-
articles I read
when
made
they
it seem
call-
like they walked off the force.
No, they're just no longer. They're just going to be at home, and then the call's going to come in saying, "Excuse me, the mayor says that his house is on fire. Can you come disperse the crowd?" And be like, "No, I'm not part of that detail anymore."
Sorry, no habla
Yeah.
inglés.
Yeah, let me get a social worker over there to help you out.
Yeah, it's okay. They're going to wear like a little vest, like a red vest that says
Right.
social worker on it, and
So
give
they
them a
won't
little
be
white
hurt.
hat. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
These
fine.
rioters always seem to make a satisfying thud.
Have you ever been around somebody when they fall and hit the ground like that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it sounds
like a
like a
melon.
sack of wet newspapers hitting the asphalt. It's not
Oh,
a good
yeah.
noise.
It's not
It-
pretty.
It kind of makes your stomach kind of go, oh
Mhm.
God. Oh.
It's like, oh.
I mean, if it's a human, these people don't register. As
Well, okay. I've been around a lot of little kids. When little kids make that sound when they hit the ground, that's when I start worrying. I'm like, oh no,
No,
poor
the little
child.
kids just bounce.
Skep, I'm serious because
Those sound like melons.
we live in a society, and part of that social contract is you have to abide by the law. Rioting is not protected. You can gather, you can speak, you can protest, but rioting is not. Violence is not. Once you break that covenant, sorry, you're no longer you're persona non grata to me, and you don't register as a person unless there's new evidence that will, but if you're throwing Molotovs at courthouses and burning buildings and attacking random people on the street and police officers for no other reason than it's you forgot your binky, or your parents left your binky at McDonald's when you were like 3 years old or something. Like,
You're still no. These are still people. They're just not good people. This doesn't strip them of their humanity. They haven't gone full Lord of the Flies, but they're certainly not good people. There's nothing mostly peaceful about throwing a Molotov cocktail.
How many times have they tried to burn the courthouse? Like, really,
if somebody threw a Molotov cocktail at you, even if you were wearing protective gear,
oh no,
you would probably take it personally. I think.
Oh yeah,
it was like
you would feel that was an assault with a deadly weapon.
It was a consecutive like 2.5 months of them trying to.
I thought they were still trying to
destroy it.
Well, it was 75 days at the time. Yeah. I don't know if we have any particular insight on this. I just think it's. I don't know what's going to happen to Portland. It is a bad thing, and I hope
Portland. How did they recover? That's a very interesting question. What is Portland's step out of this trough? How do they? First of all, what they need is a decent leader. They've got to have. Well, no, I'm dead serious. They've got to have a mayor who has the best interest of the city in his heart, and not the sort of cretin who's been, quote, leading them, end quote, so far, because that's not leadership.
No, he has
Would that
not
even
been
be elected,
leading.
though?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's Portland. Would that even be elected?
If times get desperate, well, okay, so the route out of this is, I mean, other than just accelerationism and just having it all burn itself down and building a new city, Portland too, is Ted Wheeler would have to step down. Somebody competent would have to be appointed by, say, somebody at the state level.
They don't want somebody
as an emergency
competent.
thing. I know.
They don't want,
and Ted Wheeler's not going to step down. But you said, how would you get out of this? And it would have to start with him stepping down.
So
there is no other way to fix this. There's him stepping down or a cleansing fire. I mean, I don't really see a whole lot of middle ground here in terms of how this is going to play out.
Yeah, they had a runoff. They had a blanket primary in 2020, so yeah, he's there
for
a while now.
The runoff election that took place was against somebody even worse than him.
Which is terrifying.
She was a full-on Antifa supporting.
I remember
that job.
Sarah,
the one who had this.
She
had the skirt. Yeah, she had the skirt that had pictures of different communists who caused hundreds of millions of people to die in total. Yeah, she was no. I'm so glad. On the list of choices that I don't regret in my life, not moving to Portland is one of them. Because that was a thing that I thought about 10, 15 years ago.
I, for one, have never thought of living in Portland.
Oh man,
it's actually a really great
city. If you ever go there, you'll fall in love with a place. I love Portland, and I remember when it was a good city.
Yeah,
that whole corridor where the river comes up, that's just amazing.
I haven't been to Portland since the late 90s, and it's a wonderful, wonderful city, and the whole surrounding area is absolutely gorgeous. But if you live in British Columbia like Sora does, I think you have a pretty good idea of what it's like. So imagine, where you live, but even more trees.
That's Washington.
It's pretty darn awesome. It's pretty darn awesome.
That's in Washington too, right?
No,
Washington.
Oregon is Portland's in Oregon, northern Oregon. But it's such a pretty part of Oregon. You have a whole bunch of different kind of trees, and it's the rolling hills that go up into the Sierras. It's beautiful country up there. So it's such a shame that the people are such cretins.
Yeah,
but that's the area. The city is kind of like cancer. We should just burn it off with napalm.
Well, the whole history of the
I don't know
West
why I'm
Coast.
being so cynical tonight. Sorry.
Well, okay, so look at the history of the West Coast. San Francisco during the gold rush was very sort of libertine. It was a place where a certain type of people who like to sort of push boundaries, loggers and gold miners and stuff all settled there. There's just a long history of being kind of weird and nonconformist in those areas, and Portland really embraced it. You know, they went all in. They just like, are you telling us we're weird? Yeah, we are weird. We admit to being weird.
Yeah.
And
We're gonna go with it.
It attracted a certain type of people over time. So you got a lot of kind of your hippies and your artists and your artist hippies, and now Portland is in a really bad way because
Well, the problem is
disturbing number of slam poets.
Well, it's one of those. What it attracted was the people who felt, air quotes, felt they were not like everyone else, and thus felt like they were picked upon, and they could have been. But it's one of those things that's always interesting to me, the people who are like, I'm not like everyone else. And then you meet like tens of thousands of people exactly like you. And it's like, you were just a dick.
Yeah.
And,
I've seen
and
it's
you're
like I've seen
also-
20 guys on unicycles today. You really aren't that unique.
Yeah, you are.
Right.
Sorry, Sora. Go ahead.
Exactly.
What were you
I
going to
was
say,
gonna
Sora?
yeah, and also if you think about the West Coast too, there's not, as we get more modern in modern history, there's not much suffering here. There's not as much hardship to live on the land necessarily than in other parts of the continent, right? You don't have harsh winters, you don't have harsh summers necessarily, so you have growing seasons, so you're not having to really
Try.
it's not as tough as, say, if you're in the prairies or on the East Coast or somewhere far north where you face a lot more challenges, or Tornado Alley or something like that. Not just say it's not without its challenges, but still, and then you have all sorts of fish and everything. So you're kind of spoiled in that sense. So there's, over time, I'm sure, and we can see it now, this blanket of I deserve this fell over everybody, and it's just been made worse and worse the last few years. A weird sense of entitlement, I guess.
To summarize, I think I'm going to try to summarize what you just said. If there are large parts of this country where if you look at them over time, you think, God must really hate trailer parks. And you look at all the stuff that happens, with the heat waves and the tornadoes and the dust bowls and all this stuff that happens. And then you look at a place like Oregon and you go, God must really love this place. It is... Mount St. Helens blew up in Washington State, and that was a bit of an affair. But other than things like that, even most of the earthquakes don't hit Oregon. They hit off the coast. So Oregon is a pretty magical, wonderful place. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of people there ruining it for everybody else. Yeah. Let's see. So, Skep, tell me about what's it feel like to have all the Californians move there and bring their power issues with them?
Yeah, it's the Californication of Texas continues as the grid is being put under strain by just simply the number of people who are immigrating to Texas. And there are more people in Texas than there have ever been before. And this increases every single day. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people moving to Texas all the time. It's getting larger, and as a result, we've got in some areas, particularly it's actually here and there all over the state, but they've got programmed blackouts where they have to save a little bit of electric capacity to make sure that everybody will be able to have some power some of the time. And
so I'm not unfamiliar with these types of things living in California.
No,
so it sounds
you're not.
like they've greened the grid, which of course makes it less predictable how much power you're going to get out of it between wind and solar.
25% of our stuff comes from solar.
The demand is going way up.
From wind. Yeah.
Right. And so the demand is going way up because there's probably a bunch of people who used to live in Portland who moved to Austin, and they're between their grow lamps and their Bitcoin mining and their electric electric unicycle, they're probably putting a huge drain on the grid.
You have no idea.
And it seems like your grid is just having some growing pains as it changes from one thing to another.
That's all it is, really. And
Yeah.
these are problems that are just waiting for money to solve them. The money is there; it will happen. This is as close to a non-event as anything. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, but California catches a ton of grief for this kind of stuff, and
I know.
they've actually done a lot to fix things. Now, in California, they've been doing these public safety power shutoffs. And when the fire conditions get to be particularly onerous, they turn off the power to the high tension lines that go over these areas, because one spark can set off some fire that will kill a lot of people, which is what happened in Paradise. And so PG&E got sued into oblivion and had to file bankruptcy and reorganize. And so their response is, oh, you're requiring us to still provide power after suing us into oblivion, so go screw yourself. Anytime the humidity drops and the wind comes up, we're just going to turn off the power.
Yep.
Have a nice day.
Yep.
And then they say, well, you can't do that. Well, pretty much just did. So
Yeah, that won't actually stay that way, though, believe it or not.
Well, what they've done is, and what they've been doing is they've been putting in a lot of these isolation circuits that they can use remotely so that they can fine-tune which parts of the grid get turned off so it doesn't affect 100,000 people every time they have to do one of these things.
Yes.
They're doing that. They're also decentralizing parts of the grid, and they're putting in a lot of local battery backup in a lot of different areas. And this is really the key, which is going to help Texas as well, because there's a lot of battery technologies that are pretty amazing, other than the lithium-ion ones. Which
they're making some advances. They're making some advances in lithium ion. They seem to have made some advances with the dendrite issue.
Well, that was that's this story, which I wasn't sure we were going to get to.
Yeah, it's not important. But anyway,
it's not terribly important. But they're going to modernize the grid so that a lot of the power supply issues are going to even themselves out. And it should just be better. I think they're going to fix it. And also in California, they've been taking some of the lines in the worst areas and burying them with lots of insulation so they can just be under the ground where they can't cause any trouble.
What a concept.
I know. But it's like Skep said, you just throw money at it and the problem goes away.
Eventually it'll fix itself.
Yeah, it's... So that's that's all there is to be said about that. Growing pains is a very good description of what you're talking about.
You guys
I don't think
made
it's
the
any
news.
more than that. Yeah.
This particular thing here is important for electric cars because if we really are, if you assume that we're going to do this thing where we're going to suddenly have everybody drive electric cars, there's a lot of problems that have to be solved. For one thing, the range on electric cars kind of sucks. And the amount of time it takes to refill an electric car's battery kind of sucks. And the number of times you can cycle it kind of sucks.
Even if you get the charge time down to 10 minutes, that will still be unacceptable for most people. Go to a gas station and wait 10 minutes for your car to fill up. That is an adjustment that the adults in America cannot make.
I've actually been to gas stations where if you have a big car with a big tank, the pumps are so slow that it takes about 10 minutes to fill up.
But that's unusual. Most people are accustomed to fast pumping gas. They're in and out of the gas station in 2 or 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this guy came up with a way of making a nice little sandwich of things that basically stop the dendrites from... Oh my God, what is going on with this picture?
Yeah, I was like, is that you or me, Harry?
If I had $5 for every story I've read in the last 20 years about new battery technology that's going to save the world, I would be really rich right now. I've heard so many of these stories about, lithium-ion batteries are too expensive to make, and if we're going to give everybody, we're going to make 1 billion electric cars, we need to come up with something better. It's like, you think? Yeah, and a lot of the battery technology stuff is pretty dry, but in a nutshell, Skep already summarized it.
Like a dry cell.
It's they've come up with a way of making a lithium-ion battery that not only charges a lot faster, but it lasts about 10 times as long. because it
They
doesn't
like
just
it,
physically degrade over time. And if they can pull this off, it'll be absolutely fantastic. So we
It'll be a
have
big step forward, but
Mhm.
it still won't be a fast enough charge time. It still won't give you enough range.
I'm
Well, the
still
thing is, if
pretty
they can
skeptical
get it-
about this stuff.
If they can get it to last long enough, most people will do it when they get home. But like, you still have stuff like Carrie makes a joke all the time about, like, if you look at my state for Tesla battery like speed chargers, there's nothing. We're a black hole, and yet there's people who still have Tesla cars here.
You have some charging stations around the periphery of your state in case anybody
yeah.
accidentally goes into West Virginia. They don't want them being stuck there with their
I feel like
Tesla
they need to have a
not being
sign
able
that
to
says,
move.
"If you have an electric car, bitch, you better charge." but that's kind of the thing, is like, a lot of people, at least around in this area, because a lot of them live in Ohio, will have Teslas, and it's just because they drive in for the day to go to work, and then they drive back out, and that's just enough. It's just enough distance that the battery covers it, and then they
Going to
charge
the
it overnight. And,
The Blinko outlet.
uh-huh.
There's also a lot of areas, I mean, in, like, for example, Texas and a few other states
God.
where, I mean, you're with farming and rural lifestyle. This would not be ideal. You need
Yeah.
gasoline and diesel still. So
Oh yeah.
Well, post-COVID, I think a lot of things are going to change in terms of commuting habits, and
Mhm.
a lot of how we're supposed to solve all of these energy problems is going to change. I don't think electric cars are feasible for the entire planet. If they could fix, there are things they've been working on, this substance called biobutanol, which has almost the same energy density as gasoline, but it's an alcohol that you can make. And they've been working on making these reactors. You could literally just shove a pile of kudzu vine in this thing, press a button, and out comes something that goes directly in your gas tank. It won't corrode
Oh, that'd be
anything, and it
lovely.
actually works.
That would be very cool.
That would be
There may
amazing.
be, yeah, there may be other things out there that are a lot better than these batteries. But as we're going to let petulant teenagers who are skipping class decide our energy future, we're going to be in bad shape.
Yeah, the idea of electricity being stored in a battery being the best, being better than using gasoline in an internal combustion engine is offensive to me. It is so inefficient. It's so wrong. Okay, in storing the energy in electricity, you lose a tremendous amount of efficiency. It's so inefficient. By the time, what percentage of the energy that goes into electricity do you think actually gets stored finally as electricity, Harry, in a typical power grid?
Well, so which, because I know that if you're talking about just
watt
the,
for watt.
if you're talking about the grid just going into the battery, you're
Yeah.
lucky to be at 90%. And that requires some pretty good engineering. So you've got a 10% loss there.
I think that would be amazing to be at 90%. I think it's actually quite considerably lower than that.
Oh no, there are charging systems that can achieve that level of efficiency. 90% is about
but most
there.
of them
But then the advantage in the car is at least you're taking DC, you're putting DC in, like you use a DC fast charger.
Right.
That's the fastest technology that we have right now for charging an electric car. And you can pump hundreds of amps into this thing, and it takes a very small amount of time to charge them. That's actually pretty good technology. Still much slower than the gas station, but it isn't, I'm going to go get a sandwich and I'm going to be half charged when I get out. You can DC fast charge, then pull DC back out, and there's no conversion cost pulling it out of the battery. But there's a lot of loss, because if you look at sort of the well-to-wheel cost of moving a car around.
That's where I was trying to go.
I figured that's what you're looking at. There's between transmission costs and generating costs and, just the efficiencies, you're losing all the way there versus just taking this refined liquid and shoving it in your gas tank.
It's nowhere near 90%.
No, I'm saying just going from the grid
I know, you're just
to the
you're
battery
just
is
talking about
90%.
generation. And losing 10% that way on top of everything else you lose on the way getting the energy in the first place. No, it's not winning.
The transmission is like 30%, depending on how far you're sending the stuff. Then the efficiency at the power plant depends on the technology. Old coal plants were not terribly efficient, but obviously something like a new gas plant, or better yet, a nuclear plant.
But still, you're looking at a horribly inefficient system to get the electricity to put into the car. That's the problem.
It's like having a VAT tax on your electricity. Everybody takes a cut along the way. It's
so wrong. And it just, there has to be a more elegant solution than generating a bunch of electricity and having all the inefficiencies that happen in the course of doing that, and then taking that and saying, okay, we're going to put that directly into your cars, as opposed to gasoline, which is an amazingly elegant solution.
Well, that's why I was saying biobutanol would be the one.
That would be nice.
Biobutanol solves all of the problems. It's actually perfect. The only problem is we don't have a process that's commercially viable for making it.
Yeah.
Other than that one small issue, it's great. But something is going to happen. If you want real inefficiency, I mean just epic inefficiency, you talk hydrogen fuel cells. Now, hydrogen fuel cell itself is a fantastic thing. I think it would be great if we could have cars run off of these. Fantastic, in fact.
A little problem with that.
The trouble is that if you buy a hydrogen fuel cell car right now, there are only a handful of places you can actually fill the thing. And to make the hydrogen, they either have to go through this incredibly dirty commercial process, which involves coal or some other hydrocarbon that very inefficiently is turned into hydrogen gas, or you have to generate all of this power that Skep is talking about and then use electrolysis to split it.
Right.
Which is an incredibly inefficient process. So you're talking about taking 1,000 watts of power and turning it into about 15 watts of motion by the time it's all done.
That's the truth. That is the absolute truth. So that's tremendously inefficient. It's an elegant solution if you can figure out how to, put the fuel in. But, we really don't have an energy problem. We have a storage problem. We don't store energy very well. That's actually what we're not good at.
Yeah, well, the molten salt batteries actually are a pretty good technology if they can just improve it a little bit more.
It'd be great to have a molten salt reactor in your car.
Yeah, well, no, this is more for grid level storage, but because you're not going to have a 1,411 degree battery in your car. I think that would not be good. So this thing right here, I was talking to both Sora and Serenity about this ahead of time, and I know Sora really likes this story. Where's this picture of this guy?
I think you passed it.
Invisible.
Oh no, that's the other article, Harry.
That's the other article. Oh, I'm incredibly incompetent right here. Okay.
No. There's one that had his picture, and this is one that came later, I think, because I don't think that's the guy. That's right.
No,
there.
It's not him. That's some other individual.
Yeah, I know the article you're talking about. I think that was his interviewer or his co-founder or something like that.
Did I just click on the wrong one? Okay, I just clicked on the wrong. No, they changed it.
Yeah, they changed it probably because they didn't like the fact he was wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
Those bastards. Okay, so let's get into this, shall we? So an ex-Facebook VR exec says he'll turn U.S. troops into invincible technomancers, just raised $450 million taxpayer dollars. Onderl founder Palmer Luckey announced Thursday that his new company has raised an additional $450 million in funding, which will be used to make technomancers. I wish he'd said technomages. That would have sounded so much cooler. Luckey is best known for selling Oculus. For selling Oculus to Facebook in 2014 for $2 billion.
Here it is.
Let's see. Anduril is the name of the company. Founder Palmer Luckey announced Thursday $450 million, which will be used to turn allied warfighters into invincible technomancers. The company is now valued at $4.6 billion. Luckey is best known for selling Oculus to Facebook in 2014 for $2 billion. Now, I'm going to do a brief unplanned aside. I have had the privilege, no, the pleasure of working with several people who made a whole bunch of money by being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And then they take their money and go on to do the next thing. And the problem is that the attitude is, this guy made a bunch of money before, he must
He can
know
do
a
it
thing
again.
or two.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so then people give them more money. And it more often than not, goes poorly. Most of these entrepreneurs who are supposedly these great brains behind these companies are not just a serial string of successes. Their second thing or their third thing, lightning doesn't often strike over and over again. And I've seen some pretty amazing amount of mismanagement go on at some of these companies.
Looking at you, Paul
I did
Allen.
Yeah, well, maybe after the stream, I'll show you a picture of the idiotic car that one of these guys owned. All right, see.
Harry, I found an article that has a picture of him that we saw. It's not about the same thing, but if you want to show what he looks like, you were...
Oh, I want to show what he looks like. Well, Sora would be so sad if I didn't actually show this, because I know Sora was really
looks
impressed
like an
with this
incel.
guy.
Is this the one where he's
He's a
wearing a
catch.
bikini?
No, that's not the one where he's dressed as Echo. I think her name's Echo.
Now there he is.
Has he ever been to Epstein Island?
He may have been too young when Epstein was at his height. I don't think he's that old.
He's born in 92.
I meant the other way. But yeah.
Oh,
But once again, I
he's a
think he
bit-
may be too young. It may have been too male.
Well, back to the important part, other than the fact that he looks. Would you give that man $450 million? Little never mind.
no.
I have friends that look like him, and I don't trust them either.
I wanted to give them 20.
Mm.
Let's see. Our future roadmap is going to blow you away. Stay tuned.
Oh God, he talks like
I
a
hate this guy already.
terrible gamer.
I know.
Oh,
Technomancers. Go ahead.
no, Technomancers sometimes appear in postmodern role-playing video games and science fiction, often as sort of magical wizard-like people with technology enhancements.
Yeah, there's an entire video game that's
Yes.
called Technomancer.
I did not know that before I read this article.
Yes.
So, like, Technomancers is the sci-fi part, and then Technomages will be the fantasy side. So,
Yeah,
I would say that Technomancer is the correct term to use in this case.
Well,
The
I'm just referring
Technomage is more
to-
like a magic user that has technological aids.
I'm alluding to the
different.
series Crusade, which was a failed follow-on to Babylon 5. I was just doing that to get Functional's attention. Okay. Anduril Technologies is a defense company that, among other things, provides border control technology, including towers with cameras and infrared sensors that use AI to track movement in states such as Texas and California. The company said it's capable
Yay.
of deploying its artificial intelligence platform called Lattice in other places, such as military bases in the U.S., to help detect and track intrusions by other people and vehicles, including drones. Elad Gil, who led the funding round, said Thursday that society isn't prepared for the growing number of threats and that companies such as Anduril can help in a multitude of areas from natural disasters to cyber attacks. So, what they're saying is, be afraid, give us money.
Bingo.
And there's this problem that's come up, and the government is certainly the current government is more than happy to spend money to make problems go away. So it's fertile ground for a guy like this in terms of what he wants to accomplish. He's making all sorts of promises here about how the government's just going to give him money and important problems are going to be solved. He said Anduril provides sensor networks, towers, drones, and powerful software that ties it all together, whose potential uses include protecting blah, 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 blah. Okay. Other tech companies are working to make American troops more lethal. Microsoft, for example, won an Army contract in March worth up to $21.9 billion to provide special versions of its HoloLens augmented reality headsets to U.S. fighters. Okay.
For training?
Now, what they have been doing is using this sort of stuff for training, and they've been doing VR type training for a while. When it comes to teaching troops about how the rules of engagement apply in different scenarios, this kind of technology can actually work, because essentially you are in a paintball game where you're going through some sort of simulated environment, and then the augmented reality works there. There's this follow-up here, which talks about the HoloLens thing. So look at this guy. Now, as a training exercise, this makes all sorts of sense to me. But Skep, how do you feel about somebody wearing something like this and going into actual combat? Does this look feasible to you?
You know, I think it was Mike Tyson, or it might have been Ali, who said everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth.
Tyson.
And that you look at Lord Fauntleroy all decked out in his VR glasses and everything else, and that doesn't look very rugged to me. That doesn't look like it's going to stand up to the rigors of combat. Combat is a dirty, it's an awful thing. You would never do combat if you had a choice to do anything else. Ground combat, infantry style combat is nasty, dirty, harsh, unexpected things, most of them bad, happen to you sequentially. And then at the end of the day, you see if you're still alive, and then you do it again tomorrow. That's what, why I went into the Navy. I didn't want that life. And when I see an obviously fragile rig on somebody like that, that's not going to last. That's not going to be ruggedized. You're not going to be, and if you have people who depend on that kind of technology, and they don't have regular combat skills, they get a modified exam, and all they have to do is know what the readouts on their Google glasses are supposed to be at certain times, and that's how they conduct contact. When those Google glasses get broken by an angry Russian fist, what's their plan B?
Well, this is another force multiplier, Skep. The idea, it's a force multiplier, because what they're doing is removing the fog of war. Every person on the battlefield will have perfect access to all the information, and they won't even
only in a gameplay. Only when they're gaming that out there at the Rand Institute or at the Brookings Institute. That's the only place that stuff works.
Yeah, hello Siri. Can you contact the base and get some ordnance delivered to that location over there where that sniper is?
Yeah. Well, there's a book called World War Z that a terrible movie spun off of it, but in the book there's a scene where they're fighting off hordes of zombies, and the satellite is showing them feed of all the zombies they have yet to even run into, and it ends up acting as a completely demoralizing force and breaking the backbone of the military in that fight. So,
well, they do use technology like this in fighter jets. Now, the F-35 pilots have all kinds of advanced heads-up displays and things of that ilk. But the difference is that they're not in a dusty, dirty, sweaty
they're actually pretty rarefied. If they don't get hit by, enemy fire, they're basically
sorry, go ahead.
They're in a high G airliner.
Yeah, it even has that cassette player where you can play Danger Zone. So it's pretty nice inside there. But the main thing is that inside that aircraft, you don't have to be IP68 certified. IP68 is one of the ratings that you need to produce something that can be taken into combat. And that's just for like water and dust protection. The 6 is dust and the 8 is water, I think. So that just means that you have a certain rating for dust, a certain rating for water. And some sort of Oculus headset thing is not going to function in that environment. You can't expect to go 30 feet under the water carrying that thing and have it hold up. This is just dumb. Now, there are communication things. You certainly can have, as in the movies, an operator who is in control of all of this stuff. They used to call it, was it C3I, command, control, communication, intelligence, and they've added extra letters and numbers. It was
just C cubed when I was at the postgraduate school. They just called it C cubed.
Yeah, I know. Well, they've LGBTQIIAIP, the whole thing, and so it's this big long thing now, and information is actually really critical, and there certainly is a need for systems like this. But to take a child's toy or an adult toy and try to pretend that it's battlefield ready is just dumb. But they put out well, you understand this process. The government decides it needs a thing. Right? We're going to work smarter, not harder. We're going to be able to project force with fewer people. So to do that, we need technology. Hey, let's have a meeting and let's just brainstorm and run this up the flagpole and see if somebody salutes. And at the end of that process comes a request that they hand out to businesses saying, can you give us this thing for a price that meets our guidelines? And Skep knows about that process because that's what you do. You put out a request for bids and proposals. And then those come in from the vendors, and then you go through an evaluation process. And right now, at least, they're not saying, we're sort of in the navel-gazing phase where we're just pretending this is something real. Well, but that doesn't stop us from spending a lot of money.
I suspect what's really going on here is that there is a narrative being pushed saying, hey, if we adopt something like this, it's going to make us look like we're really, on top of things, looking like we're pressing bleeding edge of technology, which is where we want to be. And so there's some artificial backing for this that isn't properly justified by the performance of the thing under actual battlefield conditions. The other thing, watch and see, they'll test this thing under quote unquote battlefield conditions, only won't really be battlefield conditions. It just won't be. Because they want the test to come out a certain way. And I know that happens too, by the way.
I'm checking to see if Assassin of the Gray is in the chat, and sadly he isn't.
He is.
He probably had to rage quit. Hearing about how dumb this is.
My thing is, from what this article is stating, it's not going to be something like the Oculus Quest. It's going to be something like what Google Glass tried to do, where it's basically a heads-up display on a pair of lenses or something like that, and that they're getting to that. I understand where you all are coming from, and I do agree that stuff's not rated to be water, but they're not going to go full VR behind a headset unless it's by the big guy up in either back at base or up in the plane, and it's just going to be them disseminating or computer disseminating small bits of info like, hey, enemy on your left, they're hid. Hey, there's a heartbeat over there. Or, hey, there's a child in that building because we get a heat sensor. That kind of stuff is going to be disseminated, but not through comms.
Hey,
and possibly
listen.
Basically. Or there's going to be a camera on it, which can also be used not so much for propaganda purposes, but for the purpose of the fact that, say that the thing that America gets accused of all the time, and same thing with Israel, where it's like, you intentionally blew that school up. No, we fucking didn't. That's where we got misled to, or something like that. And it can be used to be shown that, no, the soldier didn't do that. The soldier didn't go in going, I'm going to kill you, fucker, or that kind of stuff too. But this is just the beginnings of them getting to that point. That's what the articles seem to me. Sorry,
so it's so you're thinking it's more like attempting to show public that, oh look, individual soldiers are now held accountable for
possibly
even easier for potential war crimes. Yeah. That can cause. I can foresee that being a huge backlash against the military by soldiers themselves. Can you imagine being put in a situation where you're already in a stressful place, being potentially given poor intel? You go someplace, you cause the death of someone you shouldn't have, and then out of nowhere, because you're the one wearing that black box and you are seen to kill that, say, child or whatever, you are the one being hanged drawn and quartered, right? Like I can't see. I mean, what's the point of joining the military if you cannot? If that's going to be a potential future for you? Because
I understand.
everyone, yeah.
But that's also like that could be said the same for the cops that are in now, with having to wear the body cams.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing. Like it's not so much. I don't think that's what it's going to be used for. I'm sure that's the angle they'll try to take it at some point if the public starts to try to push back against it. But I honestly just see it as it's like a built-in heads-up display. So this way they get information disseminated to them in a different way than just over comms, because comms are a bitch.
Okay, so so Sora asked the right question almost immediately when I was talking to her before the show, which is how are you going to power all this stuff?
That's the big thing, yeah.
Okay, so back to the battery technology, you've got a lithium-ion or a lithium polymer battery built into this thing.
Would you have to put a Faraday cage over that?
Well, okay. There's that. Also, as an aside, I was going to say,
fell down a rabbit hole.
Electronic countermeasures are a thing. All you have to do is basically disrupt the communications network. If I was in a combat situation, and somebody jamming the radio, effectively jamming the battlefield internet that somebody's deployed. So it's like, oh no, the Wi-Fi's down. Okay, I guess we're just going to die. That would not be a good situation, and it's not that hard to disrupt those kinds of communications.
No.
So power and communications are both vulnerable in this situation.
And I get that, but it's one of those things that I think they're going to try to aim for how it is in video games, where it can be connected to the outer world, but it's also a self-contained system, where it has its own processing of, it looks for heartbeats, it looks for heat map, it looks for all that kind of stuff, even if it loses internet connection. Now, the Faraday cage part, Sora has a fair point. If both sides have those, though, I can't see them EMPing their own soldiers. But who knows? Like, people are fucking nuts in war.
Well, actually, the incentive to do that is going to be to kill off all the Boston Dynamics things that are schlepping all the cargo around.
and just because Sora's brought it up, and so have other people, Green Badger Outdoors has a good point in chat.
And what would that point be?
I thought you were going to highlight it.
I'm going to if I can find it.
It's the one from timestamp 9:30 p.m. He says the other thing that springs to mind is that's the one.
Yeah.
The other thing that springs to mind is it's going to be treated like NVGs, or it is nowhere near ready for prime time, and is being put out there to scare the Russians, Chinese. The Russians and the Chinese are busy bragging about their hypersonic missile technology. They are not going to be scared by this. We have if we're trying to scare the Russians and the Chinese, we have a lot of things we need to change.
But Harry,
with our
soldiers of the future.
Actually, the big thing that should scare the shit out of the Chinese is Biden continuing to print money. If he does that, and inflation really gets a hold of the United States may suffer. China will absolutely fold up like a cheap suit. One thing about China and the United States is if you break China, you hurt the United States. If you break the United States, you destroy China. It's a different deal completely. And what we're doing to our currency is still the most important thing that's happening right now, in my opinion.
It is. I thought we'd take a week off from that particular topic.
Yeah, we haven't really had any development this week. I just wanted to
Oh, I know we're going to revisit
in the back of your mind that that's a huge problem that's getting worse.
But what this reminded me of, because I'm very cynical. I've done this dog and pony show before. It wasn't that many years ago that I got myself on a little plane and I flew out to Eglin Air Force Base, and I had to do one of these dog and pony shows where it's like, look at it, look at this and give us money. And so I'm actually pretty well acquainted with what it's like on the vendor side of something like this. You look for these. So we have a complete picture between me and Skep. It was kind of a weird experience because it wasn't something I normally do. I was actually filling in for somebody else who got ill at the last minute, and it's like, oh, Harry's a giant know-it-all. Let's send him. He can fake it. It's like, okay, this is fun. But this immediately reminded me of another thing that happened, because when people want something badly enough, they tend to kind of look past. Their critical thinking skills start to break down. And what I was immediately reminded of was the Theranos story. And to me, this is pretty interesting now. I talked to Serenity and Sora. Now, Serenity, you said you were familiar with it, right? You've sort of followed this a little bit, and I think Sora said you were only vaguely heard about it.
I went through that timeline article you provided. Now, Serenity might still be out. The doggies were crying. She did step away for a little bit. I'm not sure if she's back.
So, Sora, could you give us just a brief overview of what happened with the Theranos thing? I mean, just sort of tell it from your own perspective. And there's not a quiz or anything. It's just give everybody a rough idea of what happened.
So, at 19 years old, this woman on screen here, Elizabeth Holmes, she decided to drop out of university and have a tech startup for a device that makes it to be easier to test blood for cancers and other blood testable illnesses by minimizing, I guess, the trauma. She was scared of needles. So she wants something where you can test blood from a small amount of blood, like a prick of a finger, instead of vial after vial. So she created, it was with a professor at the start. She went to one of her professors and they started the company together, started to like get funding and all this stuff. So very, very, very quickly, I think it was quite like a few $1 million. She started gaining more and more funding and building this company. And at the same time, there is no information coming out, like zero. She locked down everybody. You worked for there, or you're visiting the compound once they build it. Non-disclosure agreements had to be signed. There were guards following you around, taking you to the bathroom. There was no way for anything to be leaked out. So as far as I could understand from this one article, I don't think any prototypes or any proprietary information was ever given. But there were some results to show like, oh yeah, we're starting to be able to test, except at some point, the FDA, a couple of years in, decided to go in and investigate basically the findings, and to which they discovered that there was a lot of errors using her machine or her testing methods. And they ended up, what they were doing is testing the samples that they had using the generic conventional method. So results were basically fraudulent.
Yeah, they pretended that they used their proprietary technology, but they were
To
actually
test,
using the old technology.
Yeah,
Right.
just what's the standard that if you go to
Just
any lab
to
get
make
your blood
sure.
drawn.
To be sure.
It was a whole Wizard of Oz kind of thing. Like, don't look behind the curtain because there's a regular lab back there.
What I found the most amazing is she was able to talk her way into funding multiple times. She was even, at one point, they were going to remove her as CEO of the company. And she talked and said to her board, and she managed to stay on. And at no point, it seems that anyone ever saw what the device was, how the testing was done. And
Yeah,
so
she was very ambitious.
By this point, by the way, she's already had contract with CVS, Safeways, I think a couple of insurance agencies, like millions of dollars coming in from different places for her to, the idea being that she was going to start implementing her devices to all of these places so people will be able to start using her finger prick method for blood tests. And so when the FDA finally got involved, then a few other people came in and started to basically tear down Theranos tech. And they found out, there isn't anything there. There's nothing. And now she's in this whole fraud.
She still believes it. She still sounds like she is totally convinced this thing is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she left Stanford. She quit Stanford so she could pursue this thing.
Because she's well adjusted.
She's incredibly ambitious. She went out of her way to learn, I forget which Chinese dialect, which, to give you an idea of how motivated she was. I mean, she's a smart, hardworking woman, but she styled herself after Steve Jobs.
That was the creepy part. Yeah.
Yeah,
she
so
started
she
wearing
tried to...
turtlenecks and never taking vacations.
Yeah, so she was trying to essentially sell herself as being a Steve Jobs, but a young woman who was a Steve Jobs. And she, as a lot of people, I don't know, I'm not qualified to talk about the state, but there are a lot of psychopaths who are incredibly charming. And there are many instances in history about people who have run these various types of cons where they've pretended to be something that they're not. And they can just influence people. They just insinuate themselves into other people's lives and then make those people want to give them money. And she was rubbing shoulders with, Bill Clinton, and I'm sure
the Alibaba guy, Mr. Something Ma. I think he's the founder of Alibaba.
Yeah.
She gave a TED talk. Basically, for like a year and a bit, she was this wunderkind of biotech. She was everywhere. And I'm wondering if that is what led to her downfall. She became overexposed. She was on all sorts of talks and everything.
Well, she was also remarkably full of crap. That was the thing. It was about
lying.
the huge amount of marketing. Now, she may have believed that she could pull this off, that if she just had enough moxie and enough drive, it would all work itself out. And she has a remarkably good skill of getting men with a lot more money than her to support her. So after all of this has gone to crap and she's waiting to be tried and sentenced, she found some hotel heir to hook up with. And so she's running around doing that now, having fun with that guy.
She's either married... Sorry.
Yeah, she married the guy, I think.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the reason this all worked was because, A, she was very, very cunning and she knew how to manipulate people. But more importantly, she told them that she was going to give them what they wanted. And that's why it reminded me of this military tech story. Because, what is it that we wanted, these years ago? Oh, it was after 9/11. We wanted to have small micro-sized labs that could test for various and sundry things. That was a whole narrative that was going on. And she sort of capitalized on that with a healthcare bent. You're going to go to CVS, you're going to get a pinprick, they're going to run all of the normal blood tests plus a cancer screening. Yeah, they're going to do all this stuff with just this one prick of blood, and the future is so bright. And people were bending over backwards to give her money. But she didn't have a product. She didn't have a proof of concept, really. There was nothing to back any of this stuff up other than the fact that she was charming and insinuated thing, and she was telling people what they wanted to hear.
All prototypes, everything on lockdown. It is amazing. It really is.
Well, you don't want anybody to know that there's no real product.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a box that makes noise and looks like it does something, but mostly it's just a conveyor belt to the lab and back that does the actual testing. And she just assumed they were going to... Yeah, they just assumed that they were going to figure all this stuff out. And so when I see what's going on with this military contracting thing, it's like, okay, well, the government's identified a need. This guy's got a bunch of free time and money on his hands, and he's ready to go on to do his second thing. And for him, it's kind of a lark. Why not sell VR headsets to the soldiers?
At least with Lucky, he has something to show previously, right? With the VR set versus Holmes, who was, as they call it, I think they call her untested in the market. Like there was nothing she had except for some scholastic achievement, which were great. That was about it up to that point. She was 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But
there's a belief in the case of Lucky that he's a guy who knows how to do stuff.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of guys who know how to do stuff in this world. And the big difference between the ones that make a whole bunch of money and the ones that don't is often just being in the right place at the right time. It doesn't mean that your idea is better than the 99 guys who worked as many hours. Yeah, I've seen so many good ideas go under. I did a consulting job for a company that was poised to be really, really big. The CFO made a mistake, and it was the kind of mistake where it seemed like a really small thing, but he basically screwed up in a way that meant they were done. And all they did was pay their creditors and throw a really, really fantastic party, and then they all just went out of business. You'd be surprised. It is so easy to fail at something like this. Anyway, though I digress. Yeah, I'm just... I don't like to see taxpayer money wasted on stuff that's like sheer folly. I think Serenity's view of this is pretty reasonable. You know, it's just about getting the information to people. I just think that a heads-up display type of thing is just not feasible in a battlefield situation. It might be great in the Navy and the Air Force, but I don't see the Army using this on the front lines at all.
Yeah, no way.
We're trying to gamify we're trying to gamify war.
Yeah,
and because these guys are already schlepping 60 pounds worth of gear.
It's not going to happen. Trust me.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to carry the power and stuff. The thing that they are doing in terms of wearables is health monitoring for the soldiers is getting a lot better, because some of what they put these guys through is amazing. So making sure that they're not on the verge of having their heart give out is actually a pretty big deal. And they're using a lot of this stuff in training. So they can push these guys, you know.
Also, keeping them warm is another problem.
Well, if you have like a hazmat suit, right, and you're working in a thing where you're dealing with chemical, biological protocols to deal with those sort of things, and it's hot and you're simulating a desert environment, you need to protect these guys. And so a lot of this wearable technology is really, really good for that sort of thing. There's also wearable technology which helps with assessing head trauma. And there's a guy who's working, I can't remember which university it is, but he's working on power generation by essentially capturing energy from the motion of the soldiers by having these nanowire type things which form these braids, and they're hoping they can generate a half a volt out of these things, just enough to power a lot of the low energy passive sort of devices. But any kind of VR headset, it's not like you're going to find a USB-C port every stop at the Starbucks and recharge every 3 hours.
Right.
Sorry, I don't mean to beat this whole thing.
That's yeah.
So
what does anybody else other than me think about this? I'm talking entirely too much.
I think it's interesting, but not, yeah. I always like the idea of the new technologies and everything like this. But for me, it's the power thing. I don't know. I think it gives a good target of where to hit the soldiers. Like let's aim for the face more. I mean, I'm sure that's a target anyway, but this at least the way the device looks right now in that first picture that you showed us of from Microsoft, it just feels too much like a potential harming of the people wearing them. But
as a training thing, it's amazing. As a training sort of thing, like you're going to be, it's like, congratulations, we've decided the U.S. government, U.S. Army is good at peacekeeping. Now we're going to teach you how to be a peacekeeper. For that kind of training, absolutely fantastic.
So,
it's certainly better than those cardboard pop-ups where it's like, oh, you just shot the, like in Men in Black, at the beginning of that. It's certainly more effective than that, but I just don't see it working in an actual combat situation.
When I was reading that, I did look up a couple of things because I'm very interested in wearables. So I found two. One is definitely specifically for military, and the other is more for like civilian privacy. But this very, very interesting anti-thermal, anti-drone camouflage that for soldier and vehicle camouflage, it's fabric.
Mm-hmm.
That is to help, and that I think is more interesting because it's It's a NATO standard polyester mesh. That's anti-infrared. And all sorts of fun things like that. I mean, for me, this is something that you can carry. You don't need to plug it into anything. You can sew it up, in a ghillie suit or something like that. And it actually protects the soldiers from enemy eyes. But
This is all bringing to mind the old story by Arthur C. Clarke called Superiority. Used to be required reading for freshman engineering students at MIT. It was a short story by Arthur C. Clarke. It was depicts an arms race and shows how the side which is more technologically advanced could possibly be defeated, despite its evident superiority due to its own what amount to organizational flaws and its willingness to discard old technology without having fully perfected the new. It's basically a story about how an arms race, by trying to be the very, very best, they didn't stick to their knitting, which was fighting the battle. They didn't tend to the job at hand and are defeated by a technologically inferior civilization. This is all about that. This is all about going ahead with unproven technology and moving it in to replace other more mature technology without a clue as to whether or not it's really going to be superior, or without perfecting it.
Your tax dollars at work, folks.
Yep. Superiority by Arthur C. Clarke. Read it. It's part of an education.
Okay, so yeah, this is this link. Am I supposed to share this link about this camouflage stuff?
Oh, that's just
That's
for
just an
info.
FYI for me to take a look at.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the
Cool.
second link there, I found that you might not want to share that one either, because I don't know the rules and stuff.
We're not going to. Minions of the Zoo does not recommend that you use anti-thermal imaging technologies.
But I also found infrared blocking lenses and reflective frames that block facial recognition scanning.
You know how you can actually take a laser and you can bounce it off a window, and then from the reflected beam, you can take a look at what the sound waves look like in the room. Because
Yes.
glass is essentially a liquid. It doesn't look like a liquid, but it's a liquid. And
It's a
it will
very
vibrate.
very viscous liquid.
And so they've been able to do this for quite a while. You basically bounce a laser off of this, and then from the reflected thing, you essentially take that pattern and then modulate it like you would a radio signal. And you can output the sound through a speaker, and you can hear what people are saying in that room.
Cool.
Do you know, and I know Skep probably knows, do you know how they defeat this technology, this incredibly advanced technology?
They close the blinds.
Well, you'd need shutters, I believe, is what the word
Yeah,
you're looking
yeah.
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
shutters would be good, but they don't have shutters on the White House. How do they do it at the White House? Does anybody know? They essentially have a pipe that is tied to a sound system, and they can play music that just sort of is projected at the window. That's all you have to do. It's like all you need to do is like, well, just put an AM radio by the window and turn it on low. Done and done. You can so this incredibly high-tech system for espionage can be defeated by a transistor radio,
Nice.
which I think is
Love
a
it.
perfect example of what Skep's talking about.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Shall we move on to the next thing?
Sure.
Let's see. What is the next thing? It is the thing that Geode sent me. The only question is, I'm not sure
Yeah.
why Geode sent it to me. Are you arguing that this is scary or that these people are idiots? Can you give me your take on this?
I just feel like it's more fear mongering. That's pretty much it. So
Well, yeah, that's the way this stuff works, right? Now, just full disclosure, I think climate is important. And you certainly can when you're trying to scare people into giving you money, because as the previous thing we were talking about, you need to have a good hook to your story. And the hook to the story here is that if all the ice melts, there won't be any more ice, right? It's just once it melts, the stuff doesn't want to grow back.
Just turn on the AC in the Arctic. You'll reform the ice. God, it's easy.
Yeah. So these guys spend a bunch of time up in the Arctic studying the ice. And yeah, I mean, you can look at the satellite stuff. I mean, I know there's people that think all that stuff's faked, and we're not going to get into that level of conspiracy stuff. But it's fairly obvious just from the satellite imagery that the amount of northern sea ice is decreasing over time.
Yep.
And it goes away, it retreats, and then it comes back in the winter, and then it retreats. And yeah, we definitely see a pattern to it, but it doesn't look to me. I mean, it seems fairly obvious that there's less and less of this stuff. But in order to get the big money for your research and everything, you have to tell it. You have to tell it in the terms of a story that if we don't do something immediately, you're screwed. So when somebody calls you up and they're trying to scam you, what do? They tell you it's a limited time offer. You don't have time to talk to anybody about this. If you don't do something right now, your genitals are going to fall off, literally fall off. And that's sort of one of those telltale signs that somebody's trying to manipulate you. And this is coming from somebody who actually thinks this stuff is important. But the idea that we're going to hit some sort of tipping point, there's all sorts of tipping points out there that could potentially happen. But if somebody comes at you with the worst case scenario and the story of, just one more straw on that camel's back and we're all completely screwed, you probably shouldn't trust somebody who tells you a story like that. That's just my opinion.
Well, it's one of those things that trying to figure out how to categorize the thoughts. With this stuff, it's like they always talk about climate change deniers, and when you talk to the people who are air quotes climate change deniers, they all talk about, yeah, absolutely, we should do as much as we can to better the earth and everything like that, but I don't think there's a tipping point. And I think that's the thing, that they're trying to rile up the smallest number of people. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it doesn't really, it works a little bit, but not in the way they ever think it's going to work. And it's one of those things that's getting rather interesting to listen to these people talk, because it just seems like a bunch of very anxious people working themselves into a right panic for no other reason than the fact that they have nothing to be anxious about, so they have to find something. But it's like,
sorry, go ahead. You finish.
No, I was like, but like I said, most people, when you say, hey, we need to do stuff to make the planet better for future generations, they're like, absolutely. We need to recycle. We need to do this. We need to do that. Like, no one, I don't know anybody, even if they are, like I said, the air quotes, climate change deniers, who will sit there and go, no, fuck it. We don't need to recycle it. Just throw trash on the ground.
Yeah, there aren't very many people that actively hate the earth and want it to have harm happen to it. But, yeah, this is, okay. Recently, now I think that people's opinions on science get changed a lot based on their politics. And it's getting worse and worse right now. So particular political opinions seem to mean, like, if you believe this politically, then you must believe this scientifically. And I really find this distasteful, the idea that scientific ideas are aligned with political ideologies. I think this is a horrible, horrible thing that we're doing. So
agreed.
If you listen to some of the more recent stuff that's been on the Dark Horse podcast, he's got the inventor of mRNA vaccines and this other guy who's a serial entrepreneur. And they're doing this, they're talking about some of the data that they were able to get via freedom of information from about the vaccines, specifically the Pfizer vaccine, from other countries. And they're showing these graphs saying, look, these lipids that are used to deliver this product seem to decrease in the blood plasma, but look at what's happening. We're seeing increasing concentrations over time in ovaries. Now, they show you a graph and you see a line, and the line is going up. Now, 99.999% of people looking at that don't even think to ask the question of, well, how significant is this scale that's on the left?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
because you can give a line whatever slope you want if you're willing to just monkey with the way the graph is drawn.
Or even just how
Exactly.
many people you test, like, because we've seen that with the Gallup polls. Like,
Well, yeah, but my point here is less subtle than you might think. My point is that people, you know, when presented with data, more often than not, don't really have the technical or logical skills or whatever to actually make any sense out of it. And nobody who's not in that discipline really even knows what this particular graph means. But if you're predisposed to wanting to think that it's all a big conspiracy and it's just the government and the big pharma trying to make money off of you, then
Yeah.
people have like a confirmation bias when they look at this sort of stuff. When
Oh,
we
yeah.
look at global warming stuff, you see there's a whole bunch of these asshole socialist douchebag agrarian subsistence level idiots who have found their way into all the climate stuff, who literally want to reshape all of society because carbon is bad, right? So they seem to think that they have license to change every single thing, and we just go, no, screw you. You don't get to be the boss of me. So we tend to look at stuff like this with more skepticism. So as soon as politics get involved in stuff, our sort of skeptical viewpoint kind of kicks in when we look at the graphs. That's all God, I said that way too slowly. But you see what I mean?
Yeah.
We can be
Yeah.
incredibly skeptical about one set of data from one group of scientists, and at the same time be almost ridiculously forgiving of the lack of information from somebody else, all depending on
Yeah.
what it is we want them to be saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was the reason I shared it, is partially because it's since a lot of the stuff about COVID is honestly realistically beginning to quote unquote wind down in terms of they're going to probably start not talking about quite as much with things opening up, aside from the people resisting to get the vaccine. They're going to go back to some of the old classics, is kind of what I figure. So
Yeah. Well, in a nutshell, when people are being sensationalistic, you should probably start to get skeptical. And I think that's
yeah.
probably the best synopsis I can come up with. You know,
Yeah.
big scary claims. You need to kind of go, really?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I found the best way to trip them up is just to go, okay, show me your study parameters. Well,
that's a start.
Yeah, it's like show me the statistics, show me the dates, show me how long stuff was tested for, show me the area it was tested for. That usually is just enough to get them to back off, because then they're like, I don't know. You're just a denier. It's like, no, I actually want to see the data. You want to
Ask 'em
speak
what-
science
what
to me?
Ask them what they controlled for.
Yeah,
And ask them what their conflicts of interest are. 'Cause
exactly.
That's one thing you have to do in medicine, is you have to disclose them.
Yep.
You know, who paid for your research, and do you have any conflicts of interest?
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm not going to listen to PETA when it comes to homeless animal statistics, because we all know what they do with them. So it's like I need to know, how long have you studied, what school, like what your education background is, not so much that it's proof of anything, but this way it gives me an idea. Like how long you've studied for, what's the margin of error? Like that's the thing with like polling with anything anymore. It's like most stuff is a 3 to 5 margin of error, and that's sometimes the entire like difference between two things is 3 to 5%, and it's that kind of stuff. It's like margin of error is usually the biggest thing for me. Is like what's that number? Is this way I know how much to believe you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you go back to Hansen et al. Back in the 80s, when they first started publishing papers about a lot of climate stuff, they showed a whole series of different plots of what, and this was when the things weren't really well understood, showing what they thought was going to happen depending on which things occurred. So it incorporated the error bars, and it said, well, if we take this particular set of policies or changes, you know, if we reduce it by this amount, you get this graph. And they showed a whole series of different graphs. So when somebody is trying to be dishonest, what they'll do is they'll show you the most extreme graph and say, well, that didn't happen, so therefore he's full of shit. You know, which isn't to say there aren't a lot of serious problems and deficiencies in the original stuff that Hansen did, but there are plots in there that match pretty closely what's actually happened. But the fact that he threw 26 out, it's like if we were doing our quiz show yesterday and you gave me 26 answers and I'm supposed to give you the point because one of them's correct.
That's not fair.
It's not really all that useful either.
Well, it's kind of taking it to the Nostradamus thing, where he was like, Nostradamus predicted it. It's like Nostradamus gave the most vague stuff he could. When it comes
every
to
time I hear Quatrain, I keep thinking about that Star Trek episode.
Yeah, just can I hit? But and that's the thing. A lot of these people are basically like they're like old school like traveling gypsies that were like red palms, air quotes, and that kind of stuff. Where it's like you're making stuff vague enough but threatening enough that it scares people into doing something.
Well, I'm checking chat. Nobody is accusing me of being a tree-hugging communist, so that's good. All right.
Hell yeah.
Excellent. All right. Anything else on this one before we move on?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. So, in the be careful what you wish for category, women now drink as much as men, not so much for pleasure, but to cope.
Whiny bitches.
My alcoholism is because of men.
Yeah, because there's not enough rich men for me to marry. Bite me, bitch.
Yeah.
Oh my god, those tattoos are ugly.
Look at the tattoo she has. I'm pretty sure she's got Pluto on there and her planets. Oh, look at that. Okay, so Saturn.
But what's her sign? That's the real question.
Yeah, she's got Pluto.
Yeah, she's got Pluto.
This
so
is not a good representation of a Pluto believer.
By the time Victoria Cooper enrolled in an alcohol treatment program in 2018, she was drinking for survival, not pleasure, she says. Multiple vodka shots in the morning, at lunchtime and beyond. In the treatment program, she saw other women in their 20s struggling with alcohol and other drugs. It was the first time in a very long time that I had not felt alone, she says. Gosh, of all the ways that people have traditionally not felt alone.
Get a cat.
Never mind. Yeah, so this is apparently a problem. We've entered the modern age, and women are being subjected to different types of stress than they were, being pushed into the workplace and trying to have it all, because that was something that they were told for the longest time. You literally can do it all. And you can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan. You can do all that stuff.
That's right.
Nope.
And the response to this is a lot of women are self-medicating. The floor is open.
I swear to God. This is disgusting to me. It's like, my God.
I mean, an addiction is an addiction.
Yeah.
There's some people who have more of addictive personality than others, and it's always going to be that way. But I just painting it like this, that seems to be, I don't know. This is weird.
It still feels like it's painting the picture of trying to blame men. And it's like, no, you made a choice because you feel inadequate and because you couldn't find, air quotes, the right guy because you wanted Edward instead of Jacob or some stupid crap like that. It's like, I understand you're depressed and I get that, but at the same time...
I just find it very culturally appropriating. That's all. That's really all it boils down to.
I'm sorry.
It is, but there are a lot of studies showing that women are not happy with a lot of the changes that have occurred. The overall satisfaction of women, especially women in the workplace, is not great.
I can believe.
Yeah,
that I can definitely believe. Yes.
Now there was another article. This reminded me of something, so I went and looked it up. This is old, but it's just another data point for you. This is from 2015, and they found that in Santa Clara County, and I'm bringing this up because I think a lot of what happens in Silicon Valley, for better or worse, is an indicator of where things often go in the rest of the country. Right?
Yeah.
So you have an awful lot of women working in a lot of high-tech jobs, a lot of stress, a lot of getting things released and out. There's a lot of pressure here in the Valley in current times. So in 2015, they actually found that binge drinking was just as big a problem for women as it was for men in Santa Clara. And I think this is probably largely as a result of just the huge amount of pressure that a lot of these women were getting. They were basically as stressed out as the guys were. And it's to their detriment. I mean, I don't mean to sound like I'm pearl clutching or trying to tell people how to live their lives, but it's kind of like, well, you wanted to have a life just like the guys, and now your outcomes are just like the guys, and you're acting like somehow you're being oppressed because of this. No, these are the choices you made.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the thing with a lot of the women who get up in arms about because I see it a lot on like Tumblr and stuff like that, where they get like the air quote feminists get mad at the women who want to be just traditional wives. And it's like, feminism at its base was supposed to be about choice. So if they want to be a stay-at-home mom and the guy goes out and works, or let's be PC, and the woman goes out and works, that's fine. But I think a lot of women, because they've been told their entire lives that you're supposed to be able to go out, make the money, but also have the hot husband who also makes as much or more than you, and have kids, and go to all the meetings, and like they just can't. They don't understand that that's the reason why there's a two-parent system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like I think that's where some of this is kind of coming from, because they're overwhelming. Is that me or is it someone else? Okay. But they're overwhelming themselves, then they're getting depressed, and then they're drinking, and then they're doing this, and then they're doing that. And it's like it's sad, but it's a choice you made, and you have two things you can either do with it. Like the very beginning of the show where it was like what was her name? Mother Moses?
Grandma Moses.
Grandma Moses. Where she changed professions at 78. Like, it's never too late to change. If you're not happy where you are, you have two choices. You can either sit there and wallow for the rest of your effing life, or you can make the change to be something that may be better. It may not be better, but at least you can say you tried it, instead of just sitting there wallowing and dying in a career you don't want.
Green Badger Outdoors is saying, what is their definition of binge drinking? The study defines binge drinking for women as 4 or more drinks on a single occasion. For men, it's 5 or more.
Yeah, that has to do with alcohol.
Because differences in body mass. So this is not... I've certainly seen people drink more, and I've seen people drink less. But we're not looking at just one celebration night out with the girls. We're talking about something that happens a lot and often. I mean, I've certainly seen it in terms of the stress. There's a lot of drinking culture in Silicon Valley. And we've seen the same sort of thing happen in big financial centers, in the 80s and the 90s and things like that. There's a lot of sort of culture of excess that goes along with being successful. So this is hardly something new, but the levels of unhappiness that a lot of women are having is new. That's a real problem. One of the studies that did not make the cut for tonight was this thing where they were talking about menopause and how menopause is taking its toll on the number of women in the workplace, saying that some women get bad symptoms and then they decide to stop working. And this is a societal problem that the government and businesses should fix. It's like,
how?
I'm extremely sympathetic to your plight. I would not want any of those symptoms either. The brain fog, the hot flashes, any of that sort of stuff. But I don't really see how this is business or government's job to try to fix biology.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the whole, like, this happens a lot with, like, even, you see it online with women who have, or think they have PCOS, that's what it was. It's like, they all think that daddy government needs to come in and fix it for them. It's like, no, there's women who came before you who worked through menopause. My mother was one of them. My mother worked until she was 68. Like,
yeah, she had to.
Yeah, like there was no choice in the matter, and she did what she had to. She worked through menopause, and she came out the other end fine. I understand it's bad symptoms, but you have two choices. You have 3 choices. You quit and do something else. Go to a doctor and see if there's something that can fix that. There's a whole bunch of different medical stuff. Or 3, go, nope, and just work through it. Like, I'm sorry, it sucks.
And right now, it should be slightly easier in that people are more open to discuss things, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not same like with a whole host of other issues. It's more, society acceptable to discuss things with your coworkers or whatever. So in essence, you're not as alone or feel ashamed or whatever that could possibly be in the past you're stopping you from discussing things. And so it may make it easier to go to your HR and say, listen, I'm currently going through this. You know, what's my medical leave or paid unpaid time off or whatever it is that you might have at your work, if possible. I may need to use those on bad days, or I might need to leave early, or whatever it is.
Or like what COVID's done now, which shown that a lot of people can work from home. It's like, hey, these are really bad symptoms. I can manage them better at home because I'm not dealing with the stress that's around me, or I'm having easy access to medication or whatever. Can I work from home some days during the week? Like, there's, like Sora said, there's so many different stuff you can do now. And it's so much more talkable than it used to be.
No, anything that results in fewer women working in the workplace is wrong, and the government should step in and fix it. That's basically what these people are saying. And whether people decide to make different choices, no, doesn't matter. Biology, no, we're just going to ignore that. That's a social construct. But still, we have to step in and make force everything to be as equal as possible. Consequences be damned. But before I make myself angry, we actually have just a fun thing, and I think this is going to fall to Sora too. This is our palate cleanser. The forecast at TikTok is calling for a hot sandler core summer.
There you go.
Tell us all about
this. I hate TikTok.
Yeah, I know. I hate TikTok too. It's cesspool.
So now, you know, instead of creating cute, like little outfits for summer, everyone's going to be wearing basketball shorts, baggy basketball shorts and t-shirts, or a polo shirt if you're feeling fancy, and like Ugg slippers and other, like basically looking at like a slobby McSlobberson. Now,
hey, I resemble that remark.
Do I think if you're at home, would I wear this? 100%. It's comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
You can, you know, clean out, I don't know, your garage or
work in the garden.
Yeah, but like I mean, I won't even
seriously,
walk my dogs.
Adam Sandler on the right is exactly how I'm dressed right now. Only my shirt is camo.
We all know you're wearing a carrot onesie.
Exactly.
What?
But just, I don't know. You know how it is. Like the next generation suddenly discovers something and they think like, oh my god, like we're the only ones who knows about this.
Oh
it's
yeah.
Like, and like Adam Sandler's totally like Daddy Bay now. Look how cool he is. That's them. That's how. At least that's what I feel like they're feeling.
Your mic is being annoying, I think. Is that you?
I don't
think
know.
That was her. Yeah.
So just try not to move. So Sora, maybe Sora or Serenity, can you explain this whole core thing? Because I didn't even know this existed, and I don't know if everybody's up to speed on what this idea of a Sandler core is.
You want to take it, or do you want me? Since you're having mic issue.
You know what? Just in case you start.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go to Urban Dictionary because it's gonna make it easier. Urban Dictionary calls it's a suffix that can be attached to a genre or word. No, it's GENERA.
Oh God, kill me now. Go on, sorry.
Yeah. Or word for one or two reasons. It's to make a new subgenre kind of thing. It's a statement that you are part of a certain group, and that's like what a lot of this stuff is. But basically, it's just like it's your aesthetic. That's all it is. It's what you like to dress as. It's what you like in your room. It's like that kind of stuff. And like there's cottagecore where you like to wear sundresses and bounce through fields of flowers and all that kind of stuff and make tea or whatever else. But that's basically what it is.
But isn't this part of identity though? I mean, it's not just a lifestyle, but people actually sort of say this is part of my personality because I'm, I'm dragon core, so I have to wear, I don't know, scales or something.
Well, that's the reason why I said it's an aesthetic, because aesthetics basically change meanings a little bit, where aesthetic is where it denotes like the stuff you like to eat and how you like to eat it, like how you talk to people, that kind of stuff too.
It's people who don't have a personality, so they have to dress like one. But the
Yeah.
thing is, and okay, that's a bit bitchy to say, because there's a
I
lot
like
of it. There's a lot of cores that I think like, oh, that's so cute. If like
Yeah.
I was a teenager or
Mhm.
whatever when this was popular, I'd be all over that trend like in a heartbeat. But that's what it is. They're just, I don't know.
Sora, stop trying to make Fleek a thing.
It's not Fleek, it's Fetch.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Damn it. No.
Fetch came first. On Fleek is a poor imitation.
Yes, it is. But that's basically what it is. It's kind of the whole. I'm going to try to be careful how I say this. It's kind of how the certain trendy things that certain people did with their sexualities and such, where they make it something that's their entire being instead of just allowing it to be an aspect of them.
Do you remember the whole hipster movement, right?
Oh, God.
Of the early mid-aughts or something like that. And then you had the specifically like the Brooklyn hipster aesthetic.
Yep.
And then you had anyway, so that's basically reborn as academia core, like dark academia or light academia core type fashion. So going to vintage or consignment stores for your clothing, dressing in earth palettes, making yourself look like some sort of, Oxford professor. I don't know how else to put it.
Homeless
It looks
Oxford.
great. I love that.
Homeless.
But it's not something that has never been seen before.
Yeah.
It's just the new generation. It's the, what are they called? Gen Z's version of what was seen before. But this is gross. I just know. It's not because they like comfort. Comfort is fantastic. Wear that in your home. Go to the summer camp in that clothes, right? Go to cottage in that. That's fantastic. I have a thing. I like dressing up if I go into town. And dressing up means putting on a cute pair of pants or something. You just look put together, not like you're slobby McSlobberson.
Okay, Judgy McJudgerson.
Damn right.
I know.
I will dress how I goddamn well please.
I love the slobby McSlobberson. That's just perfect.
I can't.
No, here's some professional advice for you, geodes. If you ever decide to become an evil consultant like me, always dress like you didn't necessarily go to an interview, but you could have if you'd really wanted to. Just
Exactly.
find that edge where you look like you are at least on the edge of interview appropriate all the time. Keep them on their toes. Let them know that they don't own you.
You don't
It
own
used to be
me,
so
bitch.
much simpler. It was so much simpler when I was younger. And I know I'm not that old, but when I was younger, you would just go stoner, geek, dweeb, surfer.
Geek.
Pothead.
There
You could just sort of point at somebody, and there was a little pigeonhole that you could assign them to, and you
Now
sort
it's all
of figured
core.
out what was going on. Goth. That's like a new thing. The black lipstick, clove smoking cigarette people with the stupid skirts and the bad shoes. That was a thing, and you could just pigeonhole people. But now everybody, because we have Tumblr, we have 76 genders, and we've got 76 different aesthetics for how people dress.
See,
and
this is
all this other
it's not
stuff.
even Tumblr anymore.
Yeah, it's not Tumblr, honey.
This is TikTok.
I'm
Tumblr's
old.
dead, unfortunately.
Tumblr.
Yeah, this is TikTok because
You young
Tumblr.
people with your tickety
Wait.
tocketies and your tumbly wumblies.
Serenity.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember, or have you ever used Polyvore?
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
This is Polyvore come to life
Yes, exactly.
on real people. Oh, that was a good site. So
This
for
is
anyone who
Sandler
doesn't,
appropriation is what it is. It's just Sandler
Well, to
appropriation.
explain what Polyvore is, Polyvore was basically like a scrapbooking site where you could put
Yeah.
like outfits together and then label them.
and it was great because if you were like a preteen, and doing things like, how would you dress if you were in Slytherin?
Exactly.
You would find, it was basically like an online version of cutting up images from magazines and making an image board. You know the meme, the starter pack meme where
Mhm.
they have like a collage of like 4 images. It's like the Karen starter pack. It's Polyvore was that, and it was great. It was fantastic, and it didn't hurt anyone
But it
because
did
you
not.
never saw it on real people.
But fanfic writers would use it to like say what
Yeah.
their characters were wearing. But like that's it. Like Sora hit the nail on the head. This is basically this coming to life, where it's like, this is what I would wear in this situation if I was rich and living in Los Angeles or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's basically what it is.
Because this isn't even, to my mind, I'm looking at this thing. He's got like a cool shirt because it says Fender on it, and Fender guitars are cool, so you're cool if you wear that shirt, right? And he's got like these baggy pants, and he's carrying around. I mean, those are pretty decent glasses, I suppose, but you have to actually work to not shave or not shave, whatever that is, at that level. That's like deciding, no, I'm going to shave, but I'm not going to shave completely. I'm going to take special steps to not completely shave, as opposed to just not shaving or shaving. It's all just, I don't know.
I
It
believe
seems
they
all
call
very
that
effective to me.
Professionally done.
And
Yeah.
the thing is, at the end of the day, also Adam Sandler is like a multi-million dollar worth actor with a couple decades behind him in the business. Like for him, he doesn't need to dress in any other way, kind of thing. Yeah, like it's different. You know, it's I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, okay, it's like how people say the difference between crazy and eccentric is how rich you are. Yeah, this is this.
Well, you know, there are stars out there that do kind of exude a bit of an effortless cool.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, even
He's not
like
one of them.
Keanu Reeves
No.
is not a great actor, but he has like a certain cool
Je ne
about
sais
him.
quoi about
Where
him.
he's like where he's kind of talking slowly in a deep voice about his American motorcycles. You know,
Yeah,
I can't
that's
remember
cool,
what,
though.
you know, but there's kind of an old school kind of cool about him. I look at Adam Sandler and I'm thinking, Happy Gilmore was a pretty funny movie, but
God
what
damn it,
what the hell is going on here?
Oh Lord.
I just like that movie because Julie Bowen was in it anyway.
Mhm.
On that note, I think that is about all for tonight. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say before we go?
How dare they have closed
Skep
down
usually likes to
Polybore?
go.
No,
Let's see.
I'm-
Skep
I was-
usually likes to go last.
Yeah, I don't really have a quote for tonight, but I just thought tonight's stream was very well put together, Harry. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure. And I knew you'd have more than a few things to say about that military thing in particular.
Oh yeah,
Your tax
a
dollars.
lot of
work,
nonsense
folks.
out there. Yeah.
Functional Geodes, do you have anything you want to say, or are you just so appalled at Sandler Core that you can't speak anymore?
No, I'm still hurting from that armadillo thing from last night.
You mean the
Fun.
underwater armadillo adventure? Yeah. It
Across
occurred
the
to me that
bottoms
now,
and
now
springs.
Skep, we did do a quiz show last night. So anybody who's listening to this, if you want to hear something way lighter than this, we actually had a pretty fun quiz show, and I
Funny.
put some effort into making these questions. They're definitely a bit above Trivial Pursuit level of difficulty, but
Very definitely. Some of them were quite good, actually.
yeah, thank you. And so I mean, it's if you like happy game show kind of stuff, definitely check it out. Now, do you have the final scores handy at all for last night? Because I
Well,
think
some more.
if we took that 1 point from Serenity and gave it to Functional, did that actually end up creating a two-way tie for first place or a three-way tie?
I don't. Let me
If
look and see.
If you changed,
It was
us, you went
okay.
to-
It was Serenity was ahead by 1 over
Yep.
Sanguine, and ahead of Prospero by 3. So
So if we reallocate, sorry,
Sanguine would need 1 extra point to tie Serenity.
no, but if Serenity lost a point,
Yeah,
Yes,
because
then
the whale.
that it would be a
that would
tie.
basically. Yeah, see,
Be a
it
tie
causes
with
far too much
Sanguine.
trouble if we give you that point.
I don't want
so
the
I'm
point.
afraid we-
I
we
don't
have to
want
leave
the
it.
point because you can't change the past, and that was my first question that I received And it set the entire tone for the rest of the quiz show. It threw me off my game. I didn't even break double digits. It was unfair. I'm calling shenanigans.
It was, other
it was
than
not my
swimming,
finest
how
hour.
do armadillos cross water?
And you
I
said
said
they
they
walk.
walk.
But the answer was they walk along the bottom of the body of water. And I was just trying to figure out, is that what you were saying, or is it like some sort of Jesus armadillo where it walks across the top? Or what the hell are you talking about? And so I was looking for clarification, and I didn't get it. So it was a bit of a half miscarriage of justice.
You were leading the contestant.
The real point.
Yeah,
the
I'm
real
only,
point
I'm
of
only
that
human,
show-
man.
The real point of that show is you all should go watch it, and it's yesterday's. So there you go.
Yeah, we actually did one about a year ago. We should put a link to the previous quiz show in the notes for
They're
last night.
fantastic. They're really fun.
It's just something that we do for fun as opposed to this, which we also do for fun, but it's a different flavor of fun.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to virtually hang out with us via the time machine, check out last night's quiz show. Skep, the floor is yours, and then we're going to sign off.
Well, I was just going to offer my compliments for a stream well done tonight. I don't have any final quotes, but
Thank you, sir.
Just good job.
All right. Well, I think I should quit while I'm ahead. With that, the zoo is closed. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Right.